Yeah, here we go. So, former student of mine, Emma, submitted her portfolio this week, and she had a fantastic prompt. And basically, she said, "Hey, I'm looking for feedback on my portfolio, but specifically, I'm interested in knowing how my portfolio stacks up against others." And this is such a pivotal thing to realize for you as you're going in and applying for jobs. It really does come down to not is my portfolio any good, but is my portfolio good enough to compete with the other portfolios that I would be up against in a job interview or for a job application? And there's a couple of ways of looking at this. One, you should be able to partition down and look at portfolios with the job that the person had in mind when they created that portfolio. A Dribbble portfolio, a Behance portfolio, and a hand-coded portfolio are going to be created for different types of jobs. Yes, I do believe that there will be designers who submit the same portfolio for a UX job, a visual design job, a product designer job, a UI position. That doesn't mean that the same portfolio is going to have the same amount of success as you move from one particular job to the next. And this is really why I think it's important to realize that you might see something that looks really shiny and it has a lot of pop to it. Or you may see something that looks really dense and it doesn't really resonate with you. You have to remember that it doesn't matter if the portfolio resonates with you. It matters if the portfolio resonates with the recruiter or the hiring manager or the design director that's seeking to fill a position. I can tell you firsthand that I've hired dozens of designers over my career, and there are things that would eliminate designers for one particular job that would make them perfect for another type of job. So when we're looking at portfolios, the first thing we need to realize is that every portfolio that you come across wouldn't actually be in competition with your portfolio for a particular type of job. Another thing to realize is it's a bit of a roulette wheel. It depends on who's actually applied for the job. There's a lot of jobs out there that simply, for whatever reason, don't get a lot of applications, while there are others that are overwhelmed with applications. There's a third piece of this that's important, and is the person that's connected with the portfolio qualified, underqualified, overqualified? How does the person align with the job itself? It's not just the portfolio. So Emma submitted her portfolio, and we're going to take a look at her portfolio, but I've also pulled a number of other portfolios that I want to use as a reference point for gauging the likelihood of success for what Emma has here. Emma, she's in a boot camp or was in a boot camp and produced this portfolio. And a few of the things that I look for right away in a portfolio, when I hit your portfolio, I want to know who you are, where you are, and what you do. It says, "Hi, I'm Emma." Okay, 1 point. People first UX UI designer. That's nice. With front-end development skills. Bit of a unicorn. Based in Brooklyn, New York. If I'm hiring and I need somebody on the team in Savannah, Georgia, Emma's out. I don't care how much of a unicorn she is. If I'm not hiring remotely, I can't consider her for the job. I think it does her the favor and me the favor to have that location in there. If I'm hiring remotely, it still matters for tax purposes. I've worked at jobs before where I could hire remotely, but only in certain places because of some sort of tax law that HR was concerned about. So while I thought it was complete BS, I didn't write that rule for the company. So I had to play by those rules. The last thing I want to do is begin having a conversation with somebody who's in an area where I can't hire them for one reason or another. So Emma, I think that works. I like that you've highlighted those key bits of information. I do think that at some point it becomes a little distracting, but I think you've managed to like stop right about the right point. I use my background in psychology, product management, and sales to create designs that exist at the intersection of user needs and business objectives. This is what we're hiring for, okay? I really want somebody who considers the user and the business at the same level. So far, so good. A lot of people are going to come out and they're going to talk about their skills. They're going to talk about the user. I really think that the business needs to be elevated, because if you're not considering the business, you're really not considering the whole picture, okay? And the third piece of this that's really missing, and it's kind of hard to determine how you work this in, is the user needs, the business objectives, and the impact on society as a whole. There are things that we can do that are great for the user, they're great for business, but they're terrible for society. And I don't necessarily know if we put it right here on the portfolio, but I do think it's something that be really beneficial for you as a designer to be thinking about that as you're working through your work. This is something that it's you don't want to do things that are bad for society, but that's went a long time as an unspoken obvious truth that nobody took seriously, and now we have the issues that we have. So people are beginning to take that a lot more seriously than they may have previously. My design process is user-centered, iterative, and results-oriented. That's all great. I think if I was really looking at this, one thing I might do, I might make a couple of adjustments to allow this to have center stage. You have this arrow here that says select at work. I'd rather see the arrow further down, and you could simply create a div and say, okay, this is 100% vertical height, and you knock this down just below. And let's just go ahead and jump into the code and see if we can make it do what we want it to do. So you've got this I am Emma. This is the top section. So right now the top section, it's kind of interesting the way that you've written this, because I am Emma. Okay, where is that? Oh, it's up here. Okay, so here's the header. And this top section actually also includes, well, it looks like the top section includes everything except for the header, which is interesting. I might partition that a little differently. Mainly what I would do is I would wrap the header and this I am Emma section in a div itself, make it 100% vertical height, and that way it could place this select at work here. It could put a lot more emphasis and focus on this without this bit creeping in from the bottom. But that's a really minor thing. While we're here, I want to go ahead and look at your head tag just to see what we've got here. You've got a reset. You've got font awesome. You've got like index, nav, main. I don't know why you've got 3 style sheets here. And I probably would flip the fonts after, but this is something that's probably just me being ticky-tack. But the three style sheets is probably a bit much for something that's, it's clear that you've hand coded it. But I do appreciate the fact that it appears to me that you're creating this work. that's going to immediately carry some points with it, because you put yourself out there and you say, hey, I have some front end development skills. That's great. So because you said that, I'm going to begin focusing on that. If you said I have some front end development skills and this was like a Squarespace or something, I'd be like, really? I don't know. I really like to see people create their own thing. I'm always worried that somebody who is using a something like a Wix or something, they're just pulling a template off of a rack. So I immediately begin to question whether they really have the skills to do that, to do the work. You clearly do. The next thing I want to do right now is I want to go ahead and look in the inspector, and I want to see how this is operating. So here I'm on an iPhone 6, 7, or 8. Let's go look at this on at iPhone 10. You see it just gets a little longer. I did notice on the Galaxy S9, like this is kicking over. You might want to go to something that's a little more let's inspect element on that. How is that written? Yeah, you might want to go to something a little more percentage based. It looks like these are, can't really tell how these are being drawn. Let's go to navlinks. Yeah, I might just use flex on that. Just flex would just do the math for you. You wouldn't have to really worry about it. I don't see, it looks like I see padding top here. Is it just inline? Maybe you've used that on the LI. See letter spacing. Yeah, I see it inline block. Yeah, this is probably where I'd just use Flexbox. I'd just say flex and justify content and space around probably just to handle that, because I don't necessarily want you designing specifically for the Galaxy S9 and the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X, but I do want you to not have something like that occurring. It's minor, but it's something that you want to watch out for. Otherwise, when I look at this, this talk stylistically, I love the logo, the E into the G. That's beautiful work. It's really clever. It's iconic. And you get the G right away. The E is just a really clever turn on the combination of letter forms. But I really think that's really nice. It shows an eye to graphical detail that a lot of UX or UI designers don't necessarily have. It's probably, frankly, I think that with our focus on UX design and UI design, graphic design itself has taken a bit of a back seat, and I see less and less emphasis on it. And for a designer who if you're going to do any sort of front end development, I really think a firm grounding in visual design is key. It's not so important for a UX designer who's really focusing on how it works and what problem are we solving. But if you're going to begin bleeding into the front end development part, man, I really think that having those underpinnings, it allows you to operate with a lot more confidence, frankly, than somebody who's approaching this from a different perspective. Let's continue going down, though. Let's see here. You've got your work. It says UX research, UX UI redesign, and project management on BondBids. And BondBids is an online fundraising platform where users participate in a timed auction that allows them to support causes they care about in a fun way, winning prizes for themselves in the process. This was a team project. I like that. One of the biggest things that most students coming out of school or boot camp will struggle with is the issue that they worked on everything in a silo by themselves. When I had conversations at IXDA with folks from Microsoft, and that was their first question: how do you have your students who are working remotely work together on projects? How do they work with other people? A lot of employers are directly concerned about hiring somebody who isn't versed well with working with other people. You can't just be in a silo all by yourself. So I think it's good that you called attention to it right there. I think the view case study button is a bit large, but really, I'm more concerned with the overall work here. This looks pretty refined, and then the work over here looks less so. But this is just a thumbnail, so I don't really get a good sense of the quality of work here. Here, the second project you have here, Assemble, this feels a lot more modern, just at a glance. It's a cloud storage application that optimizes how people organize, share, and collaborate on content, either for personal use or in professional workspace. This was my first full-scale project as part of the Block Design Apprenticeship. So, point of clarification, I used to work for a company called Block. She was clearly a student there, and I think it's good to call attention to the fact that this was part of a boot camp. It's really helpful, frankly, when you have a team project. It's easy to say that this is a boot camp project. When you don't have the team project here, it's much harder to come out up front and say, yeah, that was a boot camp thing, because you're looking to like pad that portfolio. But I think that's the real goal here, is for you to be able to move forward and say, hey, I did the boot camp thing, and now I've got other things. You want to be able to say, in a month or so, hey, and here's a new project. You want that third maybe you went to a hackathon, or maybe you did a pro bono thing for a charity, or maybe you've gotten a freelance gig. You want that third project to pop up here, so that this first project where you began like really stretching and growing, that gets pushed further and further and further down, and eventually it won't even be part of your portfolio. But I think it's, right now it's definitely helpful because it looks a little more refined than bond bids. But also I immediately, when I see this and I'm comparing the two and I see, oh, it's a team project, I begin thinking to myself, oh, maybe this. I'm interested in knowing what specifically you did, because it says UX research, UX redesign, and project management. Here it says branding and product design. This sounds like you were like really like in control of the visual aspect here. This sounds like you were doing research, and again, it says right away working with a team. Just a little contact information. Here's some links. I think this is all good. You want to update that date, 2019, and that's really where maybe writing just a little bit of JavaScript using the date object to pluck out the year and stuff in to an area like this would be helpful. It's a little just front end JavaScript that could just update when somebody loads the page. Ben Howard, a project I was going to reference. If I refresh this, it's going to say a different. Well, it didn't actually. It says good morning. Oh, I'm sorry. It's dependent on where I am, not where he is. Ben's got some JavaScript here that changes this message. It makes it feel a little more alive. He flips around. It says good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dependent on where you happen to be. Right now it's 11:24. If this was 12:24, it would say good afternoon. Um, I think those little things that make your site feel up to date or current are helpful. It also keeps you from having to run around and remember when to plug those things in. That again, that's just data object and JavaScript. Let's go ahead and look at a case study though. So this is bond bids. I like the fade. Oh, I like the little progress bar up there. That's nice. The fonts work really well together. Bond bids, donate money to your nonprofit and win great prizes for yourself in the process. Let's see what you've got here. So you've got a short summary. Why bond bids was already live, and the client enlisted us to delve into the design to suggest ways in which the platform could be improved. My group of 4 people were tasked with focusing on improving the onboarding process for new users. I like the fact that you basically put some guardrails around this. I'm not talking about the whole thing. I'm talking about this particular wedge of it. View redesigned onboarding, view original onboarding. It might be interesting. I'm just wanting to see where we're at here. So this opens an InVision prototype, and I think it's always important that this opened in another window rather than taking over. So I want to view the original onboarding just so that we get a picture of what this is. And what's interesting here, Emma, is that I'm not getting a one-to-one. Like here I'm opening up a Google Drive. Here I'm opening up an InVision Studio. I might actually suggest coming in and throwing this into an InVision prototype just so I can see it side by side. Like it's hard to compare this to this. Like this is something where I'm clicking sign up and I click got it and I kind of get the flow. Here I don't really get the flow. I don't necessarily know if what you've created is an improvement or not, just at first blush. That's the first reaction I have to it. So here's your team. I would say and myself. Duration. Here's your role. Here's the tools you used. That's all fine. What problems were we solving for? I think this is important. You talk about this as a team, and then you switch back to I. I think it helps to keep it team oriented all the way through. So what problems were we solving for rather than am I solving for? You've got your solution there. I do think it's very important. We typically at the bottom of all these, we've got some sort of what I learned. Yours is actually pretty substantial here, and I think that having a high level, like, the challenge, the solution, what we learned, and having a couple of bullet points up top to give us like that summary would be really helpful. Most people, when they're coming in and looking at your portfolio, they're really interested in, okay, first of all, obviously, what they do, what is this thing that they worked on, but the bigger thing that most people are interested in is what you learn. Like, if this isn't a big, like you didn't design like an Uber car app or something like that. So what did you learn by doing this project? Because it's very likely that the job you're applying for will be much different than this particular project. So what you learned in doing this project is frankly probably more useful to a future employer than the rest of what follows. But there's a couple of different types of users that are coming through looking at this. the first user that's coming through and looking at this is somebody who is considering you for the position, and they're trying to determine, okay, who's in, who's out. And in looking at this, you give them a summary. You can see a couple of different options. I get how long you spent on it and what you did, and then I get an overview. I don't get the what you learned though, and I think that's relying too much on the second person to come through and understand that, hey, the hiring manager went through these and they said these are the 10 best that I've got. I want to make sure that you make it in. So I would love to see a little more of this up top, like a quick summary of what you learned. So we get into the research, and when you start the research, I really think that this is where the second person comes in. Like, you've made the first cut, and this is a totally different person diving in deeper on on what you have. So you've got your competitive analysis, so it shows that you kind of felt out the space. Here's your user research, clarifying the expectations and frustrations. Personas. So you created a persona. You've got your flows and the original onboard user journey. I'm always interested in how these come together for mobile. So I'm just going to throw this into an iPhone X. We've got, yes, see how small that gets? I just think I would link to it at that point. It says view original design. And you've got a lot more here to it. So I think I would just hide this original onboarding user story or user journey. I don't think you need it. And I would probably just link to these in mobile. If we get out of this for a second, works fine on a desktop, but I think I would link to those in mobile. Original design. Let's see here. Content strategy. Site-specific terminology such as bond bids and RoboWinner created confusion for users. I know this pain all too well, and I'll just tell myself right now, the terminologies that you use in your projects, when I say feedback loop, some of you know what that means. Some of you who have interacted with me know what that means. Those people out there that have never interacted with me have no idea what that means. And it's my mistake. It's my mistake for trying to talk to a new person and talking about feedback loop. They don't get it. They don't get RoboWinner, okay? Auto bidder, tries. I think that is really super smart. Erica Hall has a book, Conversational Design, and she talks so much about these the terminology that you use. The old company that I worked for, the understanding of what a section was, what a module was, what a checkpoint was, people got lost just in the words that we use to describe these things. So I think that what I'm interested in is how much focus you put on that as we get down here. I'm just going to go quickly look. Keep the explanation of how the product works simple. Boom. There it is. That's a great finding, okay? A lot of people overlook something that simple, and it's really easy not to value it, okay? It's really easy to say, hey, you know what? That's terminology. That's not really design. But you're looking to eradicate. You're trying to pick out the thorn in the foot of the user and you're making sure that they're having the best possible experience. And so much of it is, You know what? What the hell's a robo-winner? I don't know what a robo-winner is. I've been reading the case study. But you're pointing out that part of the problem here was that some of these things are just inside. The term I always used to hear is inside baseball. Okay, inside baseball is a reference to when you're talking about something that is something only a baseball fan would know about. If I wanted to flip it a different way, there are ways that people talk in a kitchen at a restaurant that the normal person would just be completely lost because they're references to cooking, and people who cook all the time, they adopt a language that becomes shorthand. It's the same thing here. We get lost inside of our own worlds, and we forget that we have to reach outside of those worlds to bring people in if we want our things to grow. And RoboWinner is a perfect example of that. Bringing the skeletal structure. I really am happy to see that this content strategy and correcting language is in there. That's super smart, and it's also something that you have to battle with ego of the company that you're dealing with. You have to fight through a lot to get them to understand those changes, and so much of the design and redesign work is battling with egos of the people who help facilitate the company into that spot to begin with. So building skeletal structure. So you've got a V1 and a V2 here. I like that this is pretty low fidelity. I like that V3, V4. I'm interested in seeing how this comes out. I'm seeing a lot of iteration, which is nice. Here's how it works. Here's choose your package. User testing. Okay. So this is flowing the way that I would like to see it flow. I don't want user testing to wait too long. And I think that, this is really showing me, I'm getting a sense of how the project came together. And ultimately, that is the most important thing that you can get out of a case study is at the top, do I have something that's scannable that's telling me really quickly what it is that this is about? And as I go down, do I get a sense of how this really came together? The thing that I think is really important is that you're showing where mistakes were made, and I like this right away. One frustration we did not address in our final redesign. Users felt the options for donating were limited. They want to have the option to donate money without playing the Bond Bids game. We designed for this, but we felt strongly in having them donate without playing the game. That having them donate without playing the game was not in the scope of the business plan. So I really think that you're doing a good job of pointing out that we didn't get to everything. Making sure that this doesn't feel too polished is really important. You should have dead ends. You should have things that didn't work out. You should have things that just flat out failed. Design is messy. It's not going to be a optimized experience. A lot of people get this idea that it's directly A to B and it's a straight line and you know exactly what to do. The most professional educated veteran designer is going to make mistakes because every plan operates perfectly until it meets with a user, and then it falls flat on its face. I was hearing some earlier today. I was finishing up this book, Decisive, and it talks about how in the pharmaceutical industry, so many of the drugs that we use are actually mistakes and opportunities created by side effects from other drugs. it's really interesting the things that you can observe and the mistakes that you make along the way. What you learn from that is really important, and I want to see that in a case study. Bringing it all together. So this is the final flow. I do think that this is where a link back to that Envision prototype that you created would be really smart to have, because I don't want to. If maybe I didn't go to it right away, maybe I just got into your process. That's something that I'm not going to necessarily want to go back and look at. And like my next thing would be like, can I click on this and have it get bigger? And it doesn't happen. So I would definitely want that link to the Envision prototype. So stay within the scope of your project. Keep explanation of how products work simple. Choosing the right language is extremely important. I guess maybe it's more the third one than the second one. Have continuous communication with your client, and know your client is always has the last word. Next steps. If I had more time, this is the important difference between your case study and a lot of other case studies I see. I see a lot of case studies end with next steps. Like there is no what I learned section. All right. It just jumps to, and here's what I would do if I had more time. Virtually nobody cares what you would do if you had more time. It's nice to have it down here. What everybody cares about is, what the hell did you learn here? Show me where you made mistakes, and show me how you overcame them. That's in here. I feel really good about this, and I think there's a couple of spots where I would clean up, particularly for mobile, what you're showing. I would add a link back to that Envision prototype down below. I might find a way to cull together a paragraph up top for like a summary of what I learned, and you can go in deeper down below. But now the question is, as we look at this, how does this portfolio stack up against some of the other things that you could be going against? So let's look at Ben Howard, okay? Ben is another former student of mine. He's in Pittsburgh. He's a long-time designer, and he's got projects. So this is Tree of Life Tragedy. I'm going to view the case study on this, and this was something that happened in Pittsburgh. So here he's talking about the site, victim survivors. So this is he's given us an overview of this is related to a news event, and there's not much of a case study here. So really, I'm just going to view the site, and this is really a site focused on who died in that horrific event. So this isn't really a case study in the way that your product design was a case study, and that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about if Ben's portfolio, which is full of great work, I'm gonna open another one. It says he did an actual size website redesign for NGVA America. Okay, so this is a website redesign that he did. Here's a summary, here's the problem solution, here's the process. Discovery, creative development, visual design, functional design, production and deployment, conclusion. What I find here is that there's a lot of really great shiny that it comes down to, if I was interested in hiring a designer with a front-end focus or a visual design focus, I'm picking Ben. If I'm looking to hire a designer who is going to help break down a problem and figure out what to solve, I'm hiring Emma. And it really hinges on the type of designer I'm trying to hire. that's why it's so important to put forth a portfolio that focuses on the type of work that you want to do. If you want to do visual design work, which Ben's kind of telegraphing to me, I want to do more visual design, and that's really what matters to me. So everything, this linked off to a platform, and this is really nice work, no question. Ben was a great student. And this is his block project. So you can kind of see like the 5th project now down is now a block project. If we look through here, process, highlights, competitive analysis, you get the idea. This is much more process, but when it came time to actually do the work and show the work, he really focused more in the direction of front end and visual, which that's honestly where he's the strongest. Emma, your work feels like it's strongest in process and UX right now. I have not even looked at the second project yet, which is a symbol, and this one feels a little more focused on front end and visual. So as we come down, I'm looking through, and it's good that you have a similar structure, challenge, solution. I don't want to have to relearn how to look at your portfolio every case study. So another good thing to point out is that when you have a case study formula, stick to it. Don't make me relearn it for every possible project. User research and user personas. So it looks like you go a little deeper into. Oh wow, that is quite the flow. Folder link. Okay. Skeletal structure. Now this is really nice. This is showing a lot more of step by step. The interesting piece to the puzzle here is you're not always going to have those steps. There's going to be projects that come along that, case in point, the bidding platform, you didn't have a brand logo identity piece to that because they already had that. Most projects won't be branding. Now, there'll be other portfolios that you look at. I'll go all the way down here to JW Designs. So JW Designs, this is a portfolio that was released by a designer, and he really focuses in on logo design, like ProKit, which feels a lot more like PayPal, but Squarespace. This is somebody who does a lot of logo design. And when you go in here, we'll look at Kitty Hawk. This is supposed to be a drone. If you know anything about drones, they typically have four rotors on them. That's why it looks like a command key, but it's actually the rotors of the drone itself. But when you look at the work here, it's very sparse. It's very sparse by comparison. But this is somebody who's wanting to do branding work. If I wouldn't hire this person to do product design work, because frankly, it doesn't really. I don't understand the process of this person. I would have to have a much deeper conversation with this person about what went into this. I can't tell how you ended up here. I like your portfolio for that. It goes deeper into your process. One thing I will say though is the older you get, the more projects you get, the less of this that you may feel like you have to do. I think this makes you very competitive. I think things like this make you very competitive as a young designer. I would advise you to continue doing in-depth case studies as you go, I find the most interesting veteran designers are the veteran designers who produce case studies like this. Like there's an energy to them. There's a designer at Uber that did this to kind of break down how they designed the Uber pool option for their app. Regardless of how you feel about Uber, I'm talking about specifically about how this designer did produce their case study, and I think that it's much more interesting for a veteran designer to produce a long form case study than just to throw visual artifacts up there. You're going to compete really well, Emma, for positions where people are really valuing process and breaking down problems and business considerations and like the jobs you want. You're structuring and setting yourself up to apply for those. Another portfolio that another student of mine, Penn Keel. Penn Keel is really fantastic. Let us catch up for coffee. Penn Keel's he's clearly got some front end tricks and some visual design tricks up his sleeve. Let's view all of his work here really quickly. So here's his work. And as you go down, here's Montero, and here's the case study. Here's the promotional website. I do think that the rainbows are a bit much, to be completely honest with you. But I like the energy of it. Here's Cheddar. It's consistent. I can't complain about that. This is a very consistent site. Let's look at the case study though. Here's the case study, and when you come down here, it says view prototype. I get a real sense of what Cheddar is. Here's the summary. Here are the deliverables. I don't know how long he took on it though. Like I really, is this something you designed over a weekend, or is this something that you designed over 3 months? It would be helpful to know. The challenge, the solution, the process. It follows a very similar tone. The personas, competitive analysis. This is really nice. Now, Emma, this is where you're probably in a quandary. Penn Keel, showing a lot of process, really solid visual design. Clearly has some fun front end work here too. The question is, and this is the place where most people freak out. They see a really great portfolio and they're like, "Oh man, I'm not quite there." Well, the question is this portfolio going to be in the batch that gets submitted with your portfolio? Probably not. This portfolio, probably belongs to a designer who's already hired. This is for somebody who lives in Mumbai. All right, you're in Brooklyn. Not likely competing for the same dollars. So I wouldn't necessarily worry. I do think that there are some things you noticed earlier. I told you, hey, you know what? Let's get the focus. Let's get the focus for you on having this top portion clean. That's what Penn Keel has done here. So when I look at, and we'll just come back all the way to the top. First of all, I do love both you and Penn Keel's logo. I would love to see this take over the space, like just wrap this in a div, give it 100% vertical height, and allow this selected work to rest right there and give the space and the focus to this. It's going to feel cleaner, just like this does. Okay. There are other portfolios you can go looking at as well. This is not a student of mine. This was one that was just kind of floating around in the Twitter sphere. It says better design, better experiences. As a designer developer, I understand the perfect interface should look good and work even better. Alongside my clients, I uncover problems and solve them. In short, I create bolder online experiences. I don't know who this is. I don't know where they are. Emma, I feel like I know a little bit more about you than I do. I'm gonna guess this is Evo. That doesn't make Evo's site bad or anything. It's starting off on the wrong foot. I don't know if I can hire Evo or not. Um, this is nice, but when I guess I've got to come here to work to see the work, and that was a nice little interaction. When I see little things like that, I want to come in and inspect the element. I want to look at the head tag and see, okay, how does this create it? So let's come on down, and there's a lot of stuff in here. Okay. Let's get an RSS feed. That's nice. Analytics, application. It's pretty clean. I'm guessing that it's probably being spat out by a generator of some sort, because to have all of these elements in it, I don't see nobody's hand coding all that. Yeah, but it's really clean. It's really clean. It's really well done. So, Evo, here's what I'm interested in. I want to come down here and look at, let's look at Free on Tour. I want to see a little bit about Free on Tour, a mobile companion for caravan travelers to network and share tips for the best routes. Free on Tour is a mobile okay, and users create routes on the go. Platform, 22,000 camping sites. Yeah, this is more like an ad for the app than it is something that tells me how it came together. This isn't a case study. It's more like an ad for I worked on Free on Tour. So while I think it's visually more interesting, I'm hiring Evo here for more front-end work or visual design work, and I'm hiring you to figure out what the problems are. So I hope that, and there are other things that we can look at here. I hope that ultimately this gives you a better sense of how we look at and telegraph to people the different design jobs that we're best suited for, based on not only the work in our portfolio, but how we present the work in our portfolio. Emma, you do a really good job presenting your process. I think that with time, with more work, your visual skills will continue to grow. I really think that with a few tweaks, your site could be even better than it is right now. Go fix that Galaxy S9 issue with the navigation. Perhaps give some readjust the homepage to give a little more focus to the intro. Jump in and add a little bit of information about what you learned a little higher up on the case studies. But overall, you're positioned well, specifically for jobs that are UX heavy. Okay, you know how to break down problems. You show that process. That's where I would really invest my time applying. If you want to do more of the visual design work, I would go add another project. I would go and potentially work on a hackathon, charity work, a freelance project, anything to get more reps that will allow you to really stretch and grow as a visual designer. But again, I think your visual design skills are actually pretty good, and you're in a really good spot. I think that ultimately it comes down to, are you applying for jobs that are best suited for the type of portfolio that you have? So that said, that's this week's feedback loop. It's top of the hour. We're doing this every week, every single week. We're going to focus it next week a little bit more on case studies. We're going to compare case studies. We're going to compare portfolios. If you have something you would like to submit for next week, feel free to go to New Pragmatic and apply for the Submit Work for Review. We're going to be launching some new programs here in May, so that's just around the corner. So keep an eye on that. But otherwise, I'm Chris Courtney. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great rest of your week. Take care.